Welcome to episode 295 of the Baunfire Gaming Podcast. I am your host, Morgan, aka Bon Diesel, and this week we'll be talking about the FTC is looking at Xbox again, Sega is suing a weirdo, my NCAA 2025 football first impressions, and much more. Before we get started, subscribe to the Baunfire on your favorite podcast app and leave a review on Spotify or iTunes, or subscribe to the Bon Diesel YouTube channel to get all of my videos, including this podcast. Thank you to everyone who supports as a YouTube member or Twitch subscriber. If you're interested in supporting this podcast and all of my other content, please check out the link in the show description. You can support my show as well by sharing any new episodes on social media or maybe just giving them to a friend. Word of mouth is a powerful thing. Let's get into some gaming news. We're going to start off with Xbox. They might be in a little trouble, but probably not. The US FTC, Federal Trade Commission, has called out Xbox for the Game Pass price change in the wake of the $70 billion acquisition of ABK. So something that people may not remember after the whole saga of that acquisition, especially how I think many of us, especially people, covering games like news and things like that, we're just kind of sick and tired of talking about it. So I believe that there's still technically an open case in the United States that it was like basically approved, but there was still like ongoing litigation going on, and I think this is part of that. Now, the FTC is pretty toothless. The current administration, it's been really interesting because the FTC has probably been the most active they've been in many years in trying to go after non-competitive practices and things like that, which is good. Like, even as an Xbox fan, it's a good thing to try to prevent monopolies and like unhealthy competition situations and stuff, but they haven't had a ton of success with actually implementing things that would help with that. So this is one of those things where I actually think that it's not a bad thing for them to go after Xbox for. It is. I talked about the raising of prices of Game Pass last time, and that, like, for me, there's still room for them to raise the price from a value perspective, where I've even like banked years of value off of this. So I'm cool with it in that sense. But when they made all these promises, when they talked about how them acquiring ABK wouldn't change the calculus and wouldn't they wouldn't degrade the product on purpose. That's what's being alleged here, is that they're they've made Game Pass worse even after this big acquisition, and they kind of said they wouldn't do that. So I'll be curious if anything comes from this. I highly doubt that it will. But if the government wants to step in and make them reverse their prices, that'd be fine with me. I think, especially after sitting on the raise, the price raise for a while, I think more so than being annoyed with the price raises, I wish they would simplify it. Now, I have joked, and I still will in the future as well, I'm sure, about how like games journalists and stuff, like anytime Xbox does anything, games journalists just turn off their brains and will suddenly be like, oh, I don't know what an Xbox Series S or X is. Is that an Xbox One? Like, they kind of do the whole, like, Microsoft probably isn't the best at naming their products. But then I also feel like it gets, like, very exaggerated by the people covering games when they act like, oh, I don't know the difference. And Game Pass is kind of in that same area right now where they probably have overcomplicated it. Because there's going to be like legacy Game Pass subscription, levels, and then there's going to be the current ones, and there's one for like the Xbox Core, or just a regular Game Pass, which won't have exclusives day one, or first party exclusives. And then there's going to be the PC Game Pass, which is a little bit more, but it does have the day one Game Pass, first party games. And then there's Ultimate, which has PC and console and the day ones and streaming. And, they really do probably need to simplify it. Like, I really think they should just do, like, I don't know, maybe like a $9.99 tier for PC or Xbox. And I guess the exclusives thing, like, I think that every tier should have the exclusives, or if it's not going to, which is our current situation or what's coming up in September, is that there should be a very clear line of, okay, yeah, regular Game Pass $9.99 subscription is not gonna get day one first party games. It'll get them after 90 days. Like to give a very specific number that everyone can just know, like, okay, if I want to play that game the day it comes out on Game Pass, I have to have Ultimate. I've got to pay the $20 a month. It does come with a bunch of other great stuff, so that's worth it to me. Or, I'll just pay the $9.99. There's a ton of stuff in the backlog. I can play all of that, and I can wait my 90 days until I get to play that game. It's worth saving $10 a month for me to do that. Like, right now, they don't have that. And so really, in my opinion, the if you have a PC, obviously that's the one you should get if you don't have an Xbox even. But if you have an Xbox, whether you have a PC or not, it just seems like it's either you should get the $20 one or none. I don't know. It's weird. I also think that they really need to consider doing a like 6 month or even a 12-month like subscription model where you get maybe 10-15% off if you subscribe for 12 months at once. Or 6 months, maybe you get like a 5% discount or something, just to give some value there and to keep people on it. Because all I'm seeing right now, or what I'm seeing a lot right now, is people are just going to, pay for it for a month and then drop off and then come back whenever there's a game that seems worth it, which is fine. And to them, I'm sure there's still value there. There's probably more value in just having people on all the time, though, just having it always. Especially as it seems like they are going to start ramping up and having, good first party games coming out every 2 or 3 months at the most, and maybe even more often. They probably want to try to keep people on, and I think that there's ways they could do that. There was also all of the talk about the family pass, where you're going to be able to pay like $50 a month to have like 5 people on your account. Obviously, that's going to get abused. Obviously, people are going to set up their little rings where one person pays for it and then everyone else pays them, $10 a month. But if they design it around that, then I'm sure they don't mind it, especially as it scales. Because this comes on the back of finding out that I believe this fiscal year they're expected to make like $5.5 billion off of Game Pass. And I believe that's at least double, if not triple, their revenue from previous years. Like, they're doing really good. You're probably not going to see that covered in games media a lot. I don't want to talk about why, because then I turn into a conspiracy theorist. But I think that's pretty good. That seems like something's going well. Is it good enough to sustain? Is it good enough for them to keep Game Pass forever? I don't know. I still foresee a day where we see a video pop up, or Phil or whoever's there at the time, and someone's going to say, hey, this Game Pass journey has been amazing. We've done some really cool things. We've gotten a lot of games out, and people have enjoyed a lot of games. But we are going to sunset that program because it's not sustainable. Blah blah blah. And then they'll have some kind of deal for people who have had it. The games you've played, you'll get like a big discount or something. I don't know. I still would be amazed if 5 years from now Game Pass still exists. Still exists as it currently is. I don't think Game Pass will ever go away. I think there will always be at least a subscription, kind of like the current base tier, or the one that's coming up, where it's like $9.99 or $14.99, whatever a month, and you get Game Pass, all the games on it, but you're definitely not getting day one first party games. You're getting those 3, 6, 12 months later. I think something like that will exist forever, or at least as long as Xbox is a platform. I think the day one first party games, that tier Ultimate, we may not see that may not last forever. So we'll just have to wait and see. Again, I don't think this FTC thing's really going to change much, but we'll have to wait and see. Speaking of things that this is probably kind of messed up, the changes to Game Pass, Call of Duty Black Ops 6, the beta is set to come out on the 4th through the 9th of September. Game Pass subscribers, blah, blah, blah. Game Pass subscribers will be able to start playing on August 30th. I've seen people bring up like, well, what about these changes? Is the base Game Pass, Ultimate, whatever. Keep in mind those changes aren't happening until the 15th. Those are going to happen after this. What does this all mean for Game Pass moving forward with whatever Call of Duty comes out in 2025? Are you still going to get the early beta access if you're not going to get the game day one? We'll have to wait and see. I don't know. Again, I think they've dug themselves a little bit of a hole. The feeling around Black Ops 6 is interesting. This seems like the most excited I've seen people in general about a Call of Duty, as they should be. I believe it's the most development time any single entry in the series has gotten since Call of Duty 4, I believe. So I don't know. I think this is Sledgehammer. I could be wrong. Whoever's putting this one out has gotten I believe 4 or 5 years to make this. So there's a lot of excitement that this one's going to feel a little more fleshed out, especially after how much of a kind of disaster Modern Warfare 3 was, knowing that it kind of started off as a big expansion and they decided to make it its own game. Probably not ideal. I'm really curious to what they are going to do and how this is going to perform. I think it's going to do extremely well. I think it's going to be very popular. I think it's going to drive a ton of Game Pass subscriptions. I bet it's going to sell maybe, not a industry changing amount of Xboxes, but they're going to sell a bunch of Xboxes for this because people are going to do the math and they're going to say, Xbox does have some games I've wanted to try out for a long time. Game Pass is a pretty good deal. Maybe I'll get an Xbox, especially on discount, one of the cheaper ones. And then I'll get Game Pass at least for a few months. They'll probably get a card for at least a month or 3 months for free with the console. And I'll check out Call of Duty there, and because I can do crossplay. So a big thing about crossplay is that, a big barrier would be, I don't want to leave my PlayStation because all my friends play there. If they come over to Xbox, they can still play with their friends over there. And that's a big change. And if you've ever wondered why PlayStation has always been so against crossplay and pushed back on it for years, that's a big part of it. To the point where I believe there's even examples of PlayStation paying developers to not do crossplay. So, you got to keep that competition healthy, or whatever you would call that. But yeah, I'm excited for Black Ops 6. I'm curious to see, what this is going to look like. I'm really curious to see the reception of it, because now it does have the kind of either stigma or the advantage of Xbox behind it. It is an Xbox game. It's going to be hard for anyone to ever really acknowledge that, especially older folks like myself. Even for me, it just seems kind of weird to even say, but it's an Xbox Studios game. ABK, Activision Blizzard King, are Xbox Studios. That is a Xbox publisher, I guess, is what they would probably still be considered. So, very weird. Something else that was super weird are Master Chief cheeks, and the fact that we will be getting no more of them. The Halo series I believe it was on Paramount, I think, has been shuttered after 2 seasons. I never watched a lot of this. I've seen lots of clips. It actually seems like, especially I think in the 2nd season, they had some moments where they actually did some of the combat scenes and stuff like that were actually really cool and looked really great. But I remember before the show even came out, and even I think the 1st season, there was kind of this narrative around, whether it was true or not, I have no idea, that there was almost kind of like a Witcher situation, the Witcher show on Netflix, where the makers of that show were kind of ambivalent and almost kind of aggressive towards the source material, and that they didn't want to use it. They wanted to kind of make their own vision of their show. That sounds like, I believe, what our deal was with Halo, and that the people kind of in charge of making it, weren't really very worried about trying to make it symbolic or representative of the games that we had played, which is sucks, right? Because you have series like The Last of Us or Fallout, which fully embraced their origins, and it paid off. They were extremely good. And I think Fallout especially was one of my favorite shows I've watched, even if I didn't know what the game was, or even if it wasn't related to a game. It was extremely good, and if you haven't watched it yet, you should. So, yeah, this Halo, and then I mean, if you haven't seen it, which I haven't either, but just knowing that like Master Chief bangs, like I understand that the games have never really portrayed Master Chief as the actual human he is, that much outside of his relationship with Cortana and others and that kind of complicated situation. But definitely not to the point of like smacking cheeks, right? And like it's just weird. And I know he spends the character that played Master Chief spends a lot of the show like not in his armor, not without his helmet on, which we famously have never seen him without his helmet on, and that was dumb. Like I understand for actors, like he doesn't want to spend a whole show where his face never gets shown. That's a big money thing, and he needs that face recognition for future endeavors. But I definitely think it kind of hurt here, and I think it showed. So I can't really say I'm sad about this. This is probably for the best. Show's been kind of a bad, like a kind of a stain on Xbox in my opinion. But I am curious if they'll ever try to do something like it again. I think it would be interesting to not do a Master Chief story, to maybe tell us some other stories. I think that there is a huge potential for some like animated series where it would be a lot easier to portray, a lot of the enemies and a lot of the factions and people in this series. Where I don't think that the real life setup is really great for that. But we'll have to wait and see. I think the next Halo is probably pretty far away, and it wouldn't surprise me if they try to do something else, kind of transmedia, with books and comics and shows and stuff, in a future date. Going to the past, we got some 360 Blades news. For the dynamic backgrounds on the series consoles, they now have the old Xbox 360 Blade menu, kind of a dynamic background. So it doesn't turn your UI into the old Blades, but it does kind of give that look, and a lot of people seem excited about that. I don't really care. I think a lot of that stuff is nostalgia. And if you fire up an Xbox 360 today and try to use that menu again, I bet it's awful. I bet it's pretty bad. And I also think that the Xbox UIs over the years, especially the current one, are like criminally underrated. I think that they're extremely nice to use. They're very, very simple, pretty easy to navigate. The biggest rip on the current UI for Xbox is that they have a lot of advertisements, especially in the front page. But in general, it's probably just because I've had an Xbox forever and they've been doing this for a long time. I don't even notice the ads, and at least they very rarely are they not like directly game related ads as well. Like I think that they've occasionally done some stuff where they pop up ads for other stuff, but it's almost always directly game related. Does the multi-billion-dollar, trillion-dollar corporation really need to put ads in their game console UI? I mean, probably not, but they do. And would I prefer if they didn't? For sure. But I've never noticed. It's never bothered me the way it does some people. I do think that, and kind of a side topic here, people always get upset every time Xbox does when you start up your Xbox, it pops up a full screen ad. And it's always for like a new first party game like Starfield or Halo or whatever. It's always for a big first party game, or for like Game Pass or something like that. Like you click one button to get rid of it. Again, it's one of those things that maybe I'm just used to it. Maybe I'm just an Xbot. Maybe I'm just hyper biased and I'm defending them out of loyalty to a corporation. But really, I just don't think it's that big of a deal. But it is what it is. And then the final bit here for Xbox, we have Kind of an interesting thing. You can now use NVIDIA's GeForce Now as a cloud gaming option on Xbox Game Pass instead of Xbox's offering. So, when you do cloud gaming through Xbox, you may or may not know that if you use Xbox's service, it's playing off of, I can't remember if it's at this point Xbox One X's or Xbox Series X's, but they have like whole racks of servers. I assume there aren't just Xboxes sitting in racks. It's probably their hardware removed from the box and put into a server rack. But that's what you're playing off of, which I assume for compatibility and other things like that is probably why they do it. It makes it easier. It's also meant that the quality isn't really the best, and depending on your connection, the latency isn't always the best. Even compared to PlayStation's streaming offering, it's quite a bit worse. My conspiracy theory about that is that they don't necessarily want people to be cloud 100%, at least not yet. They really want people to try it out, see how great their service is, want a better experience, and then to buy an Xbox. Is even though people seem to think that they don't want to sell hardware anymore, I still think they do. And I think that a degraded cloud platform is maybe on purpose. Or maybe they're being cheap. I have no idea. But this NVIDIA GeForce Now is supposed to be, it's like the best streaming service. So if to be able to play your Xbox Game Pass games through that on the cloud is probably the best case scenario. And may open it up to more people. Again, I think this is another one of those things where it's like, they're doing this to try to get people into the Xbox platform, into the ecosystem, and then you maybe try to pull them in deeper into getting hardware or getting a PC and paying for Game Pass that way and things like that. So I don't think this is the biggest issue in the world. What I do think is interesting is this is yet another collaboration between Xbox and NVIDIA. There's been a lot of this lately between Microsoft and NVIDIA as well. I really hope, and I think it would be a huge move for them to make the next Xbox at least use NVIDIA GPU tech, because having DLSS instead of AMD's FSR tech would be a huge deal. It would be really, really big deal. It would be for the longevity of the hardware. DLSS is still just the best. Like FSR is not there. It hasn't caught up. It may never, because people don't realize AMD's a big company. It's not even close to as big as NVIDIA. And so there's just more resources with NVIDIA. Now, that said, NVIDIA is completely focused on AI right now. They don't give a crap about their gaming GPUs, all of that stuff. That is such a side project for them. If you've paid attention to the industry, you'll know that they just really don't give a crap. So maybe that's a little concerning, but I bet they wouldn't mind selling a few dozen million units and getting a big fat contract with Microsoft to make their GPUs. I don't know what Microsoft would do like CPU wise, because NVIDIA doesn't make those necessarily. There is all the talk about the ARM processors right now, which in theory they could go down that route, and they are experimenting with it on Microsoft, and they have for a long time. I think a more natural partner would be like to have an Intel CPU tech and then NVIDIA GPU, but maybe Intel wouldn't want to do that because they have their own GPU tech they're working on. So we'll just have to wait and see. It's a very interesting world. I just know that Microsoft is the one who needs to make moves, who needs to try to do something exciting. And I think if the PlayStation 6 and the next Xbox are just basically mirrored AMD CPU and GPU products again that are basically the same box, that's only going to favor PlayStation once again. I think that Xbox needs to try to do something different. I think they need to try to do it early, and we'll have to see how that plays out. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if NVIDIA is involved. From what I could see, we didn't have any big PlayStation news this week. For Nintendo, there was kind of a curious announcement from them about a new Joy-Con charging station. This seems kind of innocuous. It's just a charging station for their controllers, the little ones that slide onto the side of the current console. But I did see some conspiracy theories that it may be a clue that because they're putting something like this out so late, that there's a chance the next Switch may either use or be compatible with the current Switch Joy-Cons. Definitely possible. It is kind of weird for them to put out hardware this late like this, if it's not going to continue to be used in the long run. The argument against that, which is pretty fair, is that they have sold over 100 million Switches. There's a lot of customers out there that, one, aren't going to upgrade to the new console ASAP, and two, need to charge their controllers. That's a lot of controllers to charge out there. So it's not that crazy to think that they're just putting out a late stage charging product. But I also don't think it's impossible to think that maybe, the next console is going to use similar or compatible or even the same controller tech. We'll have to wait and see. Moving on to the other gaming news, not related to the big platforms. NCAA Football 2025 first impressions. I have played probably around 15 or 20 hours of this already. That includes the 10-hour preview that was able to be played last week. It has gotten a Metacritic score of 88, which is really solid. It's extremely good. It seems like overall the game is liked pretty well. People seem really excited that it's back after a decade missing. The most of the criticisms I've seen is that people feel like at least parts of the game are kind of bare bones. And there's supposedly people who have had some performance issues. This is a game that is not on PC at all. You will only be able to play this on PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series consoles. Apparently the Series S, it doesn't look great. It's not a great performer on there. I've been playing on Series X where it's played excellently. I've had a very good time with it. I have mostly been doing my career mode. I haven't really played too much of the scrimmage, and I haven't played any Dynasty yet, which is typically kind of, between the my career or the Dynasty are the two like headline modes, at least in my opinion. And the my career one, I mean, it's not the deepest thing on earth. It's not like you're playing like a full-fledged RPG, but it definitely has some juice. It's a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it. You have to compete with other players, and that you pick a player, you can make it yourself or someone else, and you pick a position you want to play, and you take that person through their college career, starting as a freshman in college, and then you have to try to beat out the players ahead of you every year, and it's kind of fun. It's again not a revolutionary game. I'm not going to pretend like it's blown my mind and games will never be the same to me ever again. It's not that. But it is really cool, and I'm really enjoying it so far. And I think I think this is a good entry. While I know they're just going to release a new one of these every year, and it's going to probably fall into the Madden syndrome, they would probably be pretty smart. It would be really cool if instead of that, they release the game like every 2 years or something to give them time to really implement new things. And then in the middle, release like a DLC where you can pay to have all the players' names updated and stuff like that. I don't know. I mean, it'd be really cool if they did that for free, but let's be honest here about how all this works. So, NCAA Football 2025, if you have nostalgia for that series, definitely worth picking up. If you like football, it's worth picking up. And that's probably the people who need to play this game. We found out from a Toys from Bob artist. They revealed that Crash Bandicoot 5 and Project Dragon, which I assume was a Spyro game, had been canceled before they left. I believe that was in the days probably before the ABK acquisition by Microsoft, and before, obviously, Toys for Bob split off from Activision, Blizzard King, and Xbox, and has become their own independent studio, even though their next big game is still going to be an Xbox exclusive. So, kind of an interesting thing. I sometimes feel like kind of like the Metroid games, maybe the Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, all those type of games have that like nostalgia where people are like, oh man, I love those games when I was a kid, and like, man, they should make more of those. Like Xbox, especially Xbox needs like a mascot. They really need that, like that cute character, their Astro or their whatever. And then these games come out and they sell like a million copies. Like they don't do anything. And so I suspect these cancellations are probably not as damning as it may seem to some. But it probably is a bummer. It probably is a bummer that, for at least like younger audiences to not have, any fewer of these games coming out is a bummer, right? We also found out that Sega is taking legal action against someone who is harassing their employees. We've seen this multiple times over the years now. I only hope that we see it more. We have seen, I believe it was Bungie through Destiny, through some people who I believe were like harassing devs by like sending them pizzas to their house, like saying, "Hey, I know your address," sending death threats, things like that. And they've straight up found out who the people were, got the law involved, and sued them, and had charges pressed and all kinds of stuff. So this is a good thing. I will never argue against something like this. The people who do this stuff are scum, and I don't, I think that anonymity on the internet is interesting because in some ways maybe you get more honest takes, maybe you get more honest opinions and things like that. But there's also a dark side to it where you get people saying and doing things that they would never do in real life for legal consequences, or F around and find out consequences. So, I'm glad to see a big publisher, a big organization taking action like this, and I hope that becomes more normal. And then one thing I forgot to put on here is there was some kind of late breaking news before the weekend that I believe not Bethesda Studios, like the studios under Bethesda, but like the Bethesda game devs, like for their own game studio. I believe a very large chunk of them have unionized. That is a pretty big deal. From before this, the unionization in gaming development has been a big topic. We've really only seen it, curiously, with QA studios, quality assurance studios, which is kind of neat. And I don't really know why that's the case. But we haven't seen too many like actual game dev studios. Not to say QA aren't game devs, they definitely are. But I'm talking about the people making the games. You haven't seen it as much from them, and this is a big one. If this goes through and everything gets handled well, there's going to be a lot of pressure on Xbox to allow this with more of their own studios, with PlayStation to maybe allow it with theirs. We'll see. They still are stuck. They still do things their way, right? Same with Nintendo, but then you even get to Ubisoft, EA, all these other publishers as well. So could be the first domino. We'll have to wait and see. Wrapping up the show with some personal news. I did do some upgrades to my setup with the last Prime Day and a big giant bonus. Not big giant, with a bonus I'm getting from work. I don't make much money. let's be straight up. But I did get a couple new screens. I've gone from some 2016 TN panel Samsung monitors for 4K 60 hertz to these Acer Predator 4K IPS 144 hertz monitors. At first, it was taking some getting used to them because it's a very different picture than what I'm used to. It's also much better. It just didn't seem like it because my eyes have been so degraded for years with those crappy panels. The biggest sin I am committing, though, I'm still running at 60 FPS or 68 hertz because I'm afraid to see games at like 120 hertz and then to go play my Series X and it not be that. And so, at least for now, I'm still restricting myself to 60 FPS, 60 hertz. I apologize to the gaming gods. The other upgrade I did was the camera. It's actually an Elgato 4K 60 FPS camera. It's their new one. It's a very expensive thing. I am still undecided. I think in my current setup, I'm not taking full advantage of it. I don't really know. My lighting definitely isn't taking full advantage of it. You may even notice in this video that I don't think it looks great, but this is the best I could do in the time I had to record the show this week, which I'm actually recording on Sunday, the same day it's going to come out because I've been very busy. This month has been insane for me. So we'll see about the camera. I may keep it just for future proofing, and maybe one day I'll change up this room and it'll make more sense. I have no idea. We'll see. I also felt like my $60 Logitech Stream Cam or Face Cam or whatever was doing just fine. So I could get $300 back if I return this. I don't know. We'll see. we'll see what I do. Not to wrap this up on a somber note, I did have kind of a weird situation happen where someone who I knew really well through work for years, for almost 10 years now, someone who I talked to all the time and who I technically was my boss in a very small way, passed away. And the circumstances around that situation aren't exactly clear yet, but I think everyone kind of knows what happened. And that really sucks. Literally a few days ago, walked by her office and I was busy and I thought, oh, I should pop in and say hi. And I had to get to my next meeting, waved, say hello in passing, and I'll never talk to her again. So to not make this a huge bummer at the end of the show, all I'll say is just try to appreciate the people around you. Take care of yourself. If you're having any bad feelings or things are going bad, reach out to somebody. There are people who care about you, even if in your current situation it doesn't feel like it. Take care of yourself. Pay attention to those around you as much as you can. We're all busy. We've all got stuff going on. I get it. I think it's okay every now and then to take a step back, smell the roses a little bit, see what's really going on around you when you're not locked into your situation. And I don't know, hug someone you love, tell someone that you like them. I don't know, just be cool. And I will fumble out of this last topic this way. And that is where we're going to wrap this show up. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. And please consider supporting all of my content by watching, listening, sharing, and following my socials. Or you can throw a few bucks my way. You can do all of those things by clicking on the link in the description of the show that has links to all of my content and ways you can support what I do. If you have your own topics, questions, or feedback, be sure to let me know in my Discord, in the YouTube comments, or hit me up on Twitter at Baundiesel or at the Baunfire. That is all I have for this episode of the Baunfire Gaming Podcast. So, until next time.